There was a guy back in the day. This was the guy who coined this phrase, anaphylaxis. And his name was Dr. Charles Richet, MD. I just want to read a paragraph from your textbook entitled Vaccination is Not Immunization, the War on Children. A Nobel laureate of the early 1900s, Charles Richet was the man who coined the term anaphylaxis. His specialty was the reactions that some people seem to have to certain foods. Richet found that with food allergies, the reaction came on as the result of intact proteins in the food having bypassed the digestive system, making their way intact into the blood, leaky gut. Foreign protein in the blood is, of course, a universal trigger for allergic reactions, not just in man, but in animals. Some of these people, sometimes people have such severe reactions to food, if they are already sensitized for that food, that they will go into shock, into anaphylaxis. And that was Charles Richet's new word. But here's what he said. Anaphylaxis, perhaps a sorry matter for the individual, is necessary to the species. The individual may perish, it does not matter. The species must keep its organic integrity intact. We can never receive other proteins into the blood than those that have been modified by digestive juices. There was a book that came out several years ago entitled The Peanut Allergy Epidemic by Heather Fraser. It's an amazingly well-researched book, not very well written, but it explains how suddenly, 30 years ago, we did not have, you did not get on an airplane and they would announce that we're not passing out peanuts because we've been informed someone is, allergic to peanuts. That didn't happen, right? Something happened. What happened was we tripled the number of vaccines in a very short time. And it turns out that one of the ingredients in vaccines is an excipient made from peanut oil. Now, here's a unique fact about anaphylactic shock. You can't get anaphylaxis from peanuts by eating peanuts. If you eat too many peanuts, even if they're bad peanuts, you get food poisoning. That's not what anaphylaxis is. Anaphylaxis requires an initial sensitization from an injection. First, you are injected with something that causes your body to have a reaction and a memory of that, and then later you eat the food, and that sets you into anaphylactic shock. I summarize Heather's book in a chapter on my website, The Peanut Allergy Epidemic. It's pretty short, and that really explains this idea. But again, we're talking about environmental stressors to the body causing these natural eliminative processes. Now this is an extreme eliminative process which sometimes kills the patient, but he's talking about elimination on a much larger scale, on a species scale. We're protecting our species from invasion by foreign proteins from other species. That's how we survived after 1 million years. All right, let's take this same analogy and apply it to carcinogenic foods. That's well documented. We know that many foods are carcinogenic. They admit it. Vaccines. In the physician's desk reference, the drug manual of the pharmaceutical industry, when you go to the section on each vaccine, at the end of each section on each vaccine, it has this sentence. This vaccine has not been tested for carcinogenicity, which means the manufacturers are telling you that we don't know whether or not this vaccine will cause cancer in your child. And that's why for the first time 3 years ago, cancer is the #1 cause of non-accidental death in children. That's right out of the CDC. So let's back up a little bit. Adaptation. Let's think about colon cancer, for example, the #3 cancer in the US for the last 30 years unchanged. Most rapidly dividing tissues are most susceptible to metastasis. So, lung tissue, prostate tissue, breast tissue, the lining of the colon, most popular cancers. We introduce these trashy hydrogenated oils with all the aluminum and all the chemicals in them all day, every day, because they taste really good. They're our comfort foods, and when we sit down in front of that TV at night and whip on Netflix, we know what we need to make the world right. Okay? So think of the cells in your poor colon having to suffer this parade of these toxic Frankenstein foods, right? The cell says no, then the next night it says no, and then the next night it says no. The cell keeps saying no. It says no by becoming inflamed. Eventually the inflammation becomes infection or induration, which is a hardening or scarring. Finally, after many years, the cell says, I can't do this anymore. The DNA becomes altered. It loses apoptosis. Remember that word from school? Apoptosis. Programmed cell death. Every cell type in your body has an expiration date on it, right? The rapidly dividing cells have a shorter one. The lining of the colon, those cells are replaced every few weeks. The liver, liver and brain, I think they're the longest. Every couple years, all those cells are replaced. But anyway, all the cells in your body are constantly dying and being replaced. Well, that program that tells them when they're supposed to die, that's called apoptosis, right? Well, the new cancer cells, they lose this message when they're supposed to die, and they keep on living. The definition, here is the definition of cancer right here. These cells keep on living. They retain the ability to replicate, but no longer have the ability to specialize. And what is this the definition of? This accumulation of cells. Eventually it becomes a detectable lump, which we call a tumor. Right. How long do you think it takes from the very first metaplastic change to the time the cancerous tumor becomes detectable by any method known to man? Take a guess. Not quite. Less. 1 year. 1 year, it takes at least 1 year. It's not that you have a cancerous liver. The whole body has cancer. The whole body was so out of balance. Your immune system was so bad in your whole body. Cancer is a general condition that localizes, not a local condition that generalizes. We have to think of it the other way, because that's where the marketing of chemotherapy and radiation and surgery comes in. Most of the time, people earn their cancer by their injudicious, self-annihilating lifestyle that goes on year after year. The body can withstand astounding periods of abuse, but finally it's the limits of matter, the limitations of matter, and your cells will break down.